So for the members of the organizing team, please let's remain in the background and provide support where necessary.
So can we start? Jacqueline?
Maybe we allow 5 minutes because people are still joining. When it's then maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay. Nous allons commencer la session à 14h05. We'll start in 3 minutes. Good afternoon, colleague. I can see that the participants are still connecting, but we need to start. Welcome to this knowledge sharing session on SDGs. I'm Louis Kwaku, manager of the Socio-Economic Statistics Division in the Bank Statistics Department. As part of our activities, we have been helping African countries to have SDGs portal for data management and dissemination. Some countries are using it very well, and you will see that during the presentation. This session will be in two parts. For the first part, we will have two presentations made by Pascal and Margaret, followed by two discussants, Stefano and Rosa, who will give us their comment on the presentation. We will then have 20 minutes for the question and answer. It is a virtual meeting. We need to follow some rules. French and English interpretation is available, so we invite you to speak in the language of your choice. To ask a question, use the chat box, you can raise you can stick on the raise your hand button. We are used for that, so we can find it easily where people can raise their hand. And so we are going to start the first part of learning from measuring SDG progress in Africa, the Uganda case study. And Pascal is going to make the presentation, but I will give him 1 minute to introduce himself and tell her what he does, and then you can start the presentation. Pascal, you can hear me? Can you hear me, Pascal?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay. So,
yes, I can hear you. Oh, thank you. My name is Pascal Byarugaba. I work with the SDG Secretariat at the Office of the Prime Minister here in Uganda. And I'll be taking us through the presentation regarding the SDG tracking in Uganda. My role basically in the Secretariat is new. It started last year with support from the UN agencies in Uganda. And my role basically is to support the planning, monitoring, and reporting function of the Secretariat. So I support government or the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, the statistical institution charged with national statistics development in tracking the SDGs. So I'll be making a presentation to showcase how Uganda has been able to make an effort in tracking the SDGs. I hope I can be able to share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
See the screen? You can see that. You can proceed.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Basically, I'm going to give a highlight on what government has been able to do in regards to monitoring and reporting of the SDGs. Then I also look at how Uganda has been able to contextualize and map out the SDGs, especially for the different sectors. And then talk a bit about the SDG, the National SDG portal and the National SDG indicator matrix. Then talk about the VNR processes and then key actions. Now, when the SDGs were adopted in 2015, Uganda developed an SDG coordination framework in 2016. And this coordination framework, basically, it highlighted a number of institutions that were mandated to support implementation of the SDGs in Uganda. And then they were categorized into 5 technical working groups. We have the planning and mainstreaming technical working group, which is chaired by National Planning Authority. We have the resource mobilization and financing, which is chaired by Ministry of Finance, communication and popularization technical working group, which is chaired by Ministry of Information and Technology. And then we have the data technical working group, which is chaired by the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. And then lastly, we have the Coordination, Monitoring and Reporting Technical Working Group, which is chaired by the Office of the Prime Minister. So basically my presentation is going to look at the Data Technical Working Group, the Coordination, Monitoring, and Reporting Technical Working Group, because these are the technical working groups that are in line with today's theme or my presentation. In last year, Uganda also, this is just a brief background, Uganda established the National SDG Secretariat to accelerate or to boost the implementation efforts and coordination efforts of the SDG implementation architecture, to also support in coordination of the different actors and stakeholders in regards to SDG implementation, especially the civil society organizations and the United Nations, plus other development partners. And the Secretariat basically is also charged with supporting government in terms of assessing and reporting on the SDGs, and also, of course, preparing like the voluntary or national review reports or the SDG progress reports. Now, after the coordination framework, what has been done in terms of supporting the tracking or monitoring and reporting of the SDGs is that we contextualized the SDG indicators because we all know that the SDGs indicators are 232, but Uganda made an effort in contextualizing to find out of the 232 indicators, how many indicators in the Ugandan context fall into Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, and eventually which indicators are applicable to the Ugandan context. So this was done. And eventually, we realized that actually 201 indicators are applicable to Uganda's context. So that was the first activity that was done to support monitoring and reporting of the SDGs. The second main activity that was also done was to map out the SDG indicators by ministries, departments, and agencies. Because the 201 indicators, of course, are very many, and there are so many government institutions that are responsible for data production for these SDGs. So in addition to mapping out the SDG tiers, there was also mapping of the indicators by MDAs or ministries, departments, and agencies to find out or to attach responsibility of different stakeholders or different government institutions to data production for these SDG indicators. So that was also done. So currently, at least every institution in Uganda, every government institution knows if, for example, we are talking about goal 3 or goal 1, each institution knows that Ministry of Finance, these are our indicators. We are responsible for data production for these indicators. Ministry of Health knows, Ministry of Education knows that. So that was also what was done in support monitoring and reporting. Then after that, ADB, of course, has been supporting a number of African countries to develop and to establish the national SDG portals or dashboards to especially support in monitoring and reporting of the SDGs. So Uganda happens to be one of the African countries that was supported through ADB and UNDESA to develop this portal, which is housed by Uganda Bureau of Statistics. And we have also definitely been able to see a number of changes happen, especially during the recent voluntary national review report that we recently produced. But this is the portal that houses all the SDG indicators for Uganda. And so if anyone is interested in finding out which indicators have data, this is the portal that houses our data for SDGs. Now, with this portal, it means there must be an effort of producing data for the SDG indicators. So what happened is that we also developed an SDG indicator matrix. So this SDG indicator matrix definitely shows which indicator has which data for which period, and which MD or ministry, department, and agency for government is responsible for producing what. So this indicator matrix is always reviewed by the Data Technical Working Group, which is chaired by Uganda Bureau of Statistics every quarter. The Secretariat definitely supports all these 5 technical working groups to ensure that each of the groups does or implements its roles and responsibilities. So one of the key roles and responsibilities of the Data Technical Working Group is to ensure that this matrix is reviewed on a quarterly basis to find out which additional indicator has data, for example, maybe in the upcoming national surveys, or if there are national surveys, for example, next year we have a number of surveys upcoming, the National Household Survey, the Uganda Demographic Survey. So it is a role of this data technical working group to review those tools for those national surveys to ensure that they integrate the SDG indicators. If the SDG indicators or questions are already integrated in the tools, then they also have to review and ensure there is detailed disaggregation by region, by gender, and by other indices. So this is what happens. So this indicator matrix is reviewed by data technical working group every quarter. Now, what has happened, of course, we know most countries, eventually we report, we make or we share our reports through the VNR. So this year, Uganda presented its second VNR, virtual, of course. And in this VNR, it shows which indicators currently have data. In 2016, when the SDGs were adopted by Uganda, and the coordination framework was developed, there was a mapping to see how the SDGs were integrated into the National Development Plan 2 by then, which just ended this year in June. And at that time, they also did mapping of the SDG indicators to find out how many indicators out of 232 had data for Uganda. And only 41 indicators at that time had data. So during the process of VNR report development for this year, we made an effort working with the ministries, departments, and agencies of government to assess and find out which additional data for the SDG indicators we can be able to produce. So in our VNR report, second VNR report, we were able to report 92 indicators with data points. So most of these indicators, when you visit the data portal, you'll be able to find all those indicators in there. Of course, this VNR, like I said, all of us know it's an inclusive report, which ensures that no one is left behind. So normally, when we are even reporting in this report, we ensure that there is detailed disaggregation by all aspects, by gender, by geographic location, and by all the other indices to ensure that we are able to, our data is able to inform, but also influence government policy and implementation, of course, plus decision making. So that was that is what our VNR report for Uganda is able to highlight. So currently we only have 92 indicators with data points. And in summary, as I conclude almost, I just wanted also to share with you the Uganda's SDG journey, just in summary, in that in 2015, of course, we see that Uganda endorsed the SDGs as a member state of the UN. My apologies, my apologies.
Hello, Pascal?
My apologies, I was in a hotel. Yes.
Okay.
They have been able to finish. So my apologies. So when Uganda adopted the SDGs in 2015, and then in 2016, like I had said, there was a mapping of NDP2, National Development Plan 2, to find out how.
Put to the slideshow. Put to the slideshow.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. So in 2016, like I had said, the government did the SDG mapping to find out how the SDGs were integrated in National Development Plan 2. And at that time, only 41 SDG indicators had data points. And then the same year, we developed the SDG coordination framework, which talks about the different technical working groups for SDG implementation. That is the same year when we also developed our first VNR report, the readiness report in 2016, which basically highlighted how Uganda was ready to adopt, integrate, and implement the SDGs as part of the National Development Plan. And then in 2018, we developed the SDG roadmap. The SDG roadmap is an action plan to basically accelerate the coordination framework. It's sort of like a work plan, which was developed in 2018, but it was developed in line with National Development Plan 2. So it actually also expired this year in June 2020. Then in 2019, last year, that's when the SDG Secretariat was established. And Uganda also appointed, the government also appointed the minister in the office of the Prime Minister dedicated for the SDGs. That's the SDG focal point minister. And then this year, we see the National Development Plan 3, which is actually aligned and well integrates SDGs 100%. We also now at 92 SDG indicators, but we are currently also reviewing the SDG coordination framework to also see what this coordination framework has been able to influence or support government in regards to SDG implementation, to assess if there are areas that need improvement, if these 5 technical working groups, for example, have been very effective or what can be done to strengthen them, but also developing a new SDG roadmap, which will be in line with National Development Plan 3 and it will run from next year in January up to 2025. And then this year we also prepared our second voluntary national review report. So what has been, what actions are we taking to strengthen the monitoring and reporting of the SDGs is that the data technical working group, which definitely comprises of the technical officers, main statisticians from ministries, departments, and agencies, they meet every quarter, like I had alluded to, and they definitely review the SDG indicator matrix. But the SDG indicators have also been integrated into the National Statistical Indicator Framework. This National Statistical Indicator Framework, it is the one that guides the National Development Plan. So the fact that now we are talking about National Development Plan 3, the National Development Plan 3 will have the National Statistical Indicator Framework. That framework looks at, it's a compilation of all the indicators, the national indicators that should be used to track the National Development Plan. So we are saying that the NSI integrates all the SDG indicators that are supposed to be part of the NSI. And that means we should be able to set targets for all the SDG indicators. Then we also have the Plan for National Statistical Development, which is basically managed by Uganda Bureau of Statistics, and it's a strategic plan for national statistics. But we also encourage and work and support the ministries, departments, and agencies to develop their own plans for national statistical development. And in this plan for national statistical development, we ensure that SDGs are part and parcel of these plans. But then what we are doing, we're also saying the SDG indicators should be localized. So, for example, when you read our voluntary national review report for this year, you'll be able to see that the 92 indicators we're talking about are basically national level indicators. You don't see a localized indicator or a regional average for a particular district of a particular region in Uganda. So we want to increase participation of local governments, of course, in many ways, but in the data aspects, we want to ensure that they are also able to track and monitor and report on the SDGs as districts or as local governments. So we have already mapped out about 20 SDG indicators that are applicable for localization at local government level. And I hope by next year, Feb, we should be able to roll out this plan. We are working with Uganda Bureau of Statistics, Ministry of Local Government, with support from UNCDF, United Nations Capital Development Fund. Then we have also started an engagement with SDG Center for Africa in Kigali to have an SDG synthesis platform to develop national level dashboards. And SDG Center, for example, every year they develop they develop a report. They come up with a report ranking different countries and reporting on the SDGs. So we are saying that as a country, we should be in position to do our own dashboards and scorecards on how we are performing the different SDG indicators. So that discussion is already in high gear with SDG Center for Africa. And we hope that possibly next year by March, April, we should have this system and we should be able to do this kind of scorecards. Basically, this is to give us more capacity so that we do more analysis of the SDG indicators apart from the usual reporting through dashboard or through the VNR. But we also engaging the civil society organizations to contribute to SDG monitoring through the citizen-generated data, because we all know that the CSOs, the civil society organizations, contribute immensely to government efforts in regards to implementing and achievement of the SDGs. And I know in most countries, especially in Africa, CSOs sometimes complain. They do a lot in terms of supporting government, but their efforts normally are not reflected in either government reports. They remain silent. So one of the ways we are innovating in Uganda is to look at the citizen-generated data and basically data from the CSOs. So we are mapping out CSOs, maybe regional CSOs, which have presence in regions, and then we should be able to link them to the aligned sectors, aligned ministries, and then their data should be able to flow and find itself into the SDG dashboard through UBOS. So our plan is to develop, we have also developed the SDG data production roadmap, because we have mapped out all the 201 indicators, found out which indicator is feasible for data production, which one is not feasible as of now. So we have developed a roadmap, or call it a work plan, for the next 2 years, to see that we are able to work to consolidate our efforts and bring together the synergies from the different ministries, departments, and agencies, and produce more data for the SDG indicators. Because for us as a country, our target is at least to have 150 indicators with data points by end of next year. So that's basically what we are targeting to do. So thank you very much, Chair. This is what I've been able to put forward. I know there is a lot, but I think more can come through questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pascal, for this very interesting presentation. Brilliant, huh? And I really like the SDG indicator matrix. It is very useful. Thank you very much. So à tous les participants, nous allons avoir une deuxième présentation et puis ensuite, et puis 2 panélistes. Après ça, on va donner la parole pour les questions. Et donc, attendez, je sais qu'il y a beaucoup de questions. En attendant, mais attendez d'abord avant de poser vos. Vous pouvez déjà mettre ça dans le chat, mais on va revenir sur les questions après les autres présentations. So let's wait a little bit for the question. You can put your question into the chat, but the panelists and the presenter will respond later. So we are going to have the second, thank you very much, Pascal. We are going to have the second presentation on the second presentation made by Margaret Mary on the status of evaluating progress on the SDGs in Uganda. So Margaret, you can introduce yourself briefly and then start the presentation. You have the floor, Margaret. We cannot hear you, Margaret. Mary?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We can hear you now. You can start.
Thank you very much. I'm Margaret Kakande. I head the Budget Monitoring and Accountability Unit, and I'm going to be presenting something for a few minutes on status of evaluating SDGs in Uganda. I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, you can proceed.
Thank you. So I'll give a very small introduction, then talk about the alignment to the National Development Strategy and Plan with the 2030 Agenda, the role of evaluation in SDG reviews in Uganda, and then quickly conclude by mentioning some of the challenges and achievements in institutionalizing evaluation of SDGs in the country. So I want to thank my colleague Pascal, who has just made a presentation because he has made my work a lot easier. He has referred to a number of issues. So as way of introduction, I would like to say that leaving no one behind requires 3 mutually reinforcing levers identified as cornerstones for countries to embrace. The first one is to empower through civic engagement and voice, enacting through integrated equity-focused SDG policies, interventions, and budgets, and also using data that is disaggregated and people-driven information. So my colleague has said that we are actually doing a lot of work in terms of developing systems, also using data from SOs. So what I want to say is that actually Uganda has embraced all the 3 levels. First of all, we have a lot of civic engagement, and this has continued to prevail to generate constructive debate on issues of SDGs. We used to have programs on sustainable SDGs where we have officials of government discussing with the communities in what we call barazas. These are public discussions where the officials are held to account. We also have a legal and policy framework, which is very conducive for SDGs. And also in addition, we have the National Planning Authority that is committing government to apply a human rights-based approach to development. A lot of work is ongoing in terms of statistical capacity enhancement. This has been talked about by Pascal. The Uganda Bureau of Statistics, for example, has adopted the shared methodologies developed for Tier 3 indicators, and data is available for 140, although for SDGs that are specific, like Pascal has said, it is 92 indicators. So with that kind of background, we can say that the National Development Strategy and Plan is very well aligned with the 2030 agenda. Actually, we had an integrated long-term simulation model that was used in terms of assessing the dynamics of the SDGs. How can the SDGs be effectively implemented within the government system? And although we did agree that the best way to go forward is to actually implement all the SDGs, we did realize that within a given resource envelope, it's better to focus on a few accelerators. And we've agreed that focus is going to be in the environment, governance, and industry. So if you look at the National Development Plan 3, which is now the plan we are running, it has been able to actually come up with programs, 18 programs, and they are all talking to those 3 categories: the environment, governance, and industry. So in that case, we've come up with 18 programs, which include private sector development. Here we're looking at how we can use the private sector more effectively through public-private partnerships in terms of affecting financing and implementation of SDGs. We have a program for development plan implementation. Basically, this is looking at institutions and how we can effectively coordinate and collaborate the implementation of SDGs that are very complex. Also having realized that most of these actually are interrelated. So you're looking at how we can improve coordination and collaboration of institutions, minimizing wastage and duplication. We have a program for community mobilization and mindset change, basically looking at how we can begin looking at sensitizing the communities, them owning the SDGs, implementing them as as one of the best objectives as a government. Then we have governance and security program. We have public sector transformation in terms of how do we ensure that actually we begin running the government as a business and not just take things for granted, because now we know that with the SDG agenda, and leaving no one behind, we cannot actually have business as usual. We have to actually transform the way we do things and make sure that we achieve what we have to achieve by 2030. We have the Human Capital Development Program, where we're looking at issues of health, issues of education, and also looking at issues of social development. Then we have regional development. Basically, we know that we've centralized. So we're looking at how regionally, how we ensure that implementation of SDGs goes down to the local governments, because basically they're the frontliners and they're the implementers. We're looking at issues of mineral development, sustainable development of petroleum resources as a critical area in terms of helping us to finance and implement SDGs. And we're looking at climate change. Like I said, that one of the accelerators for SDGs is going to be the environment. So we're actually focusing on issues of climatic change, natural resources, environment, and water management. So really, if you look at our NDP3, it's 100% talking to the 17 SDG goals. It's really aligned, and the only thing we're actually working on is sequencing and ensuring that we really ensure that this complex SDG framework is able to be implemented within our resource envelope. So we're looking at issues of sequencing and how do we ensure that intersectoral linkages are maximized for maximum achievements. So another thing I'm supposed to actually talk about is the issue of evaluation, how it has played a critical role in the SDG reviews. Like Pascal has said, we've had 2 reviews. Our first review was in 2016. And this basically was assessing the country's readiness to implement the SDGs. And this really reviewed the legal, the policy frameworks. It was looking at issues of institutional capacity, budgetary operations, monitoring and evaluation practices. And the question, of course, was, what are the gaps? So we had a data gaps analysis that was done for all sectors to actually review, do we have any areas where we have policy contradictions? What are the areas where we have trade-offs that are contradicting? Where can we actually ensure that we merge synergies in terms of implementation and so on? So after that work of data gaps analysis for the first voluntary national review in 2016, it was agreed that at the policy level, we should actually look at issues of prioritization and mainstreaming of SDGs in national policies, plans, strategies, and ME frameworks. And this is something that Pascal has been describing, how we've actually gone about it to ensure that actually we prioritize and we ensure that we mainstream all the SDGs right from the national level. And now we are actually localizing to the local governments. He already mentioned that we already have a minister for SDGs and also have a secretariat. And this came into being in 2016. And this was all the work of evaluation. And this was something that played a key role in terms of the reviews of the SDGs. When we had our second review, which was last year, 2019, although of course it delayed a bit because of COVID, and it went into 2020. And we've just had a report come out in July this year. And this actually stepped up the evaluation role. And a number of evaluation studies were looked at. In fact, for this second VNR, more than 300 documents were reviewed, and some of them were actually, of course, evaluation reports to really inform the process of the review. But of course, critical among these was the consultations that we had. We had a participatory consultation, and maybe you can say that this was enhanced by the COVID, because then we had a longer time in terms of consultations online, and we were able to include even other beneficiaries of SDGs. And the key stakeholders here who are actually new, who are not in the first VNR, were the youth and the school children. So the second VNR was able to use participatory assessment as a mode of evaluation. And in this case, they were talking to the youth to actually get their views in terms of SDGs and what actually matters to them. So more than 23,000 youth were actually talked to online, and they were actually giving their views, why they think we could actually do better, or what things make sense to them, what do they think works for them, what can be done differently, and so on. So in this case, some of the things that were actually reviewed or assessed was in this idea of leaving no one behind. What are the innovative practices that can enable achievement of SDGs? And it was very interesting actually in terms of you talking to the youth, because the youth have a lot of ideas, new ideas, innovations in terms of what can be done differently, what we can actually do to achieve the SDGs. You know, we have issues of funding, but they have very innovative ideas. And also they were looking at what are some of those opportunities that can be harnessed by government and non-state actors to accelerate progress towards achievement. So this was a very critical thing in terms of using the beneficiaries actually to give their views in terms of evaluating the SDG framework, the agenda, and what they think we can actually do better, what they thought we could actually change, what works, what doesn't work, and so on. And this was a very critical role in terms of this second VNR in terms of consultations. So one of the things that we can actually be proud of in terms of what we've achieved in terms of having evaluation is the fact that now we have baseline indicators. these baseline indicators have been established for evaluating SDGs. For all those indicators that are within the M&E framework, indicators have been established in terms of the assessment. This is an achievement because if you're talking about evaluation, if you don't have baselines, you can't really talk about evaluation. So we are very proud to say that because of the capacity we've put into evaluation, we've been able to develop baseline indicators, and for a number of them, data, the 92, that data does exist. Also, another thing which we can say we have achieved because of evaluation is that the fact that we've really developed and we're still developing the capacities of national statistical systems. So this has enhanced the production of high quality, comparable, and regular disaggregated data to address national data gaps. And we really have a well-coordinated national statistical indicator framework system. So this is very important in terms of actually looking at all the sectors, the synergies within the sectors, and also to see where we have intersectoral linkages, but very importantly to see how this information can actually be generated. But what I want to underline is the fact that data that is disaggregated, because if you're talking about leaving no one behind, we need information on basically on everybody, on all aspects of development. We need information by the variable of age, we need data on other variables, geographical location, by sex, and so on. So we find that this issue of having data which is disaggregated has been taken on by the horns, by the Bureau of Statistics and all the statistical departments and the different departments in the ministries. And this is something that we can say we've achieved because of evaluation. However, we still have a very big challenge, and this is the challenge of inadequate funding. So this is still affecting effective institutionalization of evaluation of SDGs. Like I've said that there are so many programs, the first VNR and the second, a number of studies were used to inform the review. But there are a number of areas where we haven't had evaluation. So we've had a lot of evaluations, or some in the area of education, social protection, women's empowerment, and industrialization. They were basically looking at small and micro and medium enterprises. But there are so many other areas where we really think that we need more evaluations that can actually inform the VNR better. And the first one is in the area of poverty reduction. We've had so many of these programs, but they haven't had effective evaluations. We have the issue of climatic change. This is a critical area where we don't see enough evaluations to inform the reviews. And last but not least, the infrastructure development. This is a very big area where government is putting most of the funding, and we need evaluations to actually show, for example, what are the most effective developments in terms of value for money, what kind of mechanisms should we actually adopt in terms of putting up infrastructure systems and so on. How can we ensure that when we are putting up infrastructure, we don't leave people behind? How do we ensure that we have local content? So we still have an issue of inadequate funding for that. So I want to conclude. I'm sure my 10 minutes are already over. I want to conclude and say that evaluation of SDGs is critical for meaningful national reviews, but we need to have significant levels of funding to conduct evaluation studies to feed into these reviews. So when all said and done, effective integration of SDGs into national policy, planning, budgeting, and M&E frameworks is one sure way of achieving the complex and integrated SDG objectives. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. You said, okay. So thank you very much, Margaret. And you did that in 30 minutes. No, 13 minutes. So it is good. Thank you very much. I have some question myself, but we need to wait. So we are going to give the floor to the discussant. We have Stefano, followed by Rosa. So Stefano, please briefly introduce yourself and give your comment about the two presentations.
Thank you very much. Okay, can you see me? And hear me fine?
I can hear you.
Okay, great, thanks. Yes. So my name is Stefano D'Enrico, and I am head of monitoring, evaluation, and learning at IDEV, which is an international institute working on sustainable development since 1974. And we've been producing a few resources on evaluation and SDGs. And actually, I'm very pleased and honored to be here to hear this presentation and having the opportunity to share some thoughts about evaluation and SDGs. First of all, let me say, I think the presentation were really impressive. I was impressed by the level of effort to set up the national statistical system. Well, to set up the system is more like to actually fine-tune the system with the SDG indicators. And I was impressed to hear that now there are 142 SDG indicators that Uganda can track. This is already impressive. I mean, there is a huge amount of data that has been created since the beginning, since the Agenda 2020 was signed back in 2015. And I think, you know, this can be one of the great achievements of the SDG so far, the production of data on sustainable development. Now, I guess, just to, you know, provoke a bit of discussion, the question is, I guess, what Ian Hopeford as well as shared in his comments. What are we going to do with all these data at the national level? Because there is a huge risk that, of course, we are all going to create a huge amount of very interesting information and very important information. But then just to use them for global aggregation purposes and just to say whether we have achieved the target, an artificial target or not. Now, I'm not sure that would be very useful. So I guess, again, going back to the presentation made by Margaret and the last point made by her, when, you know, this is going to be helpful only if the data will be used for decision-making at the national and local level. So I guess the question I have is, you know, we're spending a lot of time, and there is, you know, we are already, we are only 10 years ahead. Our target 2030 is fast approaching. The time is clicking. And the question is, we have spent all this time to develop the data because we didn't have, and it was surely a necessary exercise, and to map all the national policies against the SDGs. But now, are we going to use this data? How are we going to do that? What is actually taken on board? And I guess one of the big challenges can be to make sure that we can take out some meaning of the data to understand what is progressing well and what is progressing less well. Because the complexity of the agenda sometimes can be very burdensome, and we cannot really understand in which area we need to do more progress or less progress. So I guess the big question I have for the floor, and I would stop here, is how are we going to use these data? How are we going to make sense of them? Evaluation, of course, is a great tool to do so. But again, I guess another big elephant in the room, which is not often mentioned when we talk about the SDGs, is prioritization. How can we use all this data and information in order to prioritize urgent issues at the national and local level, which are different? Priorities must be different for different contexts and different realities and different countries. So again, how can we use, you know, all this data and information for national planning and for prioritization? And there is a big risk, of course, that because we have so many data, what we are tempted to do is just to select the data that we are, you know, to cherry pick the data that are most useful for the agenda that we already have, to the preconceived agenda, and just tell the story that we want to hear. So the SDGs should be the opposite. We should actually understand all the interlinkages and actually make decisions on that basis. So yes, two big questions. How do we use evaluation and the stats to make decisions and to make the good priorities in order to progress as fast as possible towards sustainable development? Thanks.
Thank you, Stefano. A lot of comment and question. I can see 20 minutes is not enough, but we'll see how to we'll check how to address that. Let's move to Rosa. Presenter, in the meantime, not all this question, I will give you the floor shortly. Rosa, you have the floor. Introduce yourself briefly and you can then give your comment.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Rosa Mamuye. I'm from the Statistics Department at the African Development Bank. I would like also to thank the two presenters, which gave us the SDG implementation and tracking process in Uganda in a very good way. My brief reflection will have two parts. In the first part, I will try to look at the place of evaluation in evaluation and monitoring in the SDGs framework and the 2030 agenda. And then we'll see how the Ugandan experience relate to the global framework. So when I say the place of evaluation in the SDGs framework, it's basically to look at the expectations, the provisions in terms of frameworks and tools from the onset of the SDGs in terms of monitoring and follow-up and review. From the beginning, the role of a robust, voluntary, integrated, and effective follow-up and review framework has been recognized as one of the pillars for the implementation of SDGs and also tracking its progress. When we mean robust follow-up and review process, it's because it's the main building block for the evaluation process that comes later on. Of course, evaluation goes beyond the review. It includes learning and also identifies strengths and challenges to help take corrective measures, both at policy and program levels, and also to evaluate even the monitoring and evaluation system itself. So,
you are getting some network problem or
the 2030 agenda envisages a follow-up and review process at 3 levels, permanent action level, and level, and final global. Review for us. How about now? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
hello? You can hear me now? Hello? You seem that you lose the network, Rosa. Hello? You can hear me now?
Hello, sir, we cannot hear you, but Rosa is not connected. I think she has internet issue.
Okay, so we shall proceed. We'll give the floor to Rosa again later. So to the two presenters, Pascal and Margaret, a lot of questions. You have some question in the chat box. Can you start? Maybe you can start as we start with Pascal on the. Did you adjust the target to country realities, for instance, and other question? Pascal, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can actually start. There are a number of questions, about 5 questions, 7 or so questions I have noted. I may not go into in order. So let me start with the first question, where someone asked, how do we engage citizens? So how there are a number of ways how we have been engaging the citizens. For example, following the VNR report, one actually of the recommendations was that we need to popularize the SDGs. You know?
Excuse me, can you hear me now?
Rosa, we will give you the floor later. Wait a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Pascal, you can proceed.
Yes. So, okay, please. So one of the recommendations was that there was need to popularize the SDGs amongst the citizens, a number of stakeholders, and like actually Margaret said, during the VNR process, we used the EU report, the UNICEF platform, and we reached out to about 23,000 young persons. And actually, we realized that actually 3 out of 5 young people did not know about the SDGs. So what we've been able to do is we have established an initiative called Youth Coalition for SDGs. And one of the initiatives, we even have a website I think I should be able to share in our chat. We've been able, these young persons have been able to come up with an initiative called 1 Million Youth SDG Solutions, where they are working around to identify young persons with innovative ideas to bring them together. And then our plan is to attach them to different stakeholders that can support them for financing, for mentorship, and then again to concretize and grow their ideas. So we are working with the UN, we are working with the Private Sector Foundation Uganda on that coalition. It's a new coalition, and we hope it will be strengthened. We already working with over 80 young persons from different institutions. And then the other thing we are doing to engage citizens, of course, citizens, it's a range of citizens. We are looking at the elites. We are also looking for maybe the common person in the community. So we also engaging the private sector through the private sector platform, which we actually establishing with support from UNCDF. And here we feel that the private sector should be in position to support implementation of SDGs, but also benefit from the SDGs. And one of the initiatives we are doing here is we are also doing the SDG Impact Initiative. I think some of you must have heard of it. It's a global UNDP initiative where they use a tool called SDG Investor Maps. So here we are actually working with the PricewaterhouseCoopers, which was identified as the Ugandan consultant to do data analytics for the SDGs to identify investment opportunities for the private sector. So that is one of the ways actually how we are even using the SDG data. One of the questions from Stefan. Then the other thing we are doing is the district local government engagement as one of the ways to reach out to the citizens in the district. Is we have started a district engagement platform with to identify district level champions, and our champions here are the district planners. We want to ensure that these district planners are well conversant with the SDGs, but also support us in monitoring and reporting of the SDGs at the district level. And the other last one, the approach we are using for this to reach out to the citizens is the voluntary local review. Of course, it's a new approach. In Africa, Uganda is among the first 4 countries which have piloted this approach. In addition to Cameroon, Ghana, and Zimbabwe. So in Uganda, we piloted this approach in one of the local governments in Eastern Uganda, Ngora district. And this is one of the best approaches to engage the citizens, to engage the local person at the community level, but also as an accountability approach for the districts. So it basically helps in districts to assess themselves on how they have been able to integrate the SDGs and district development plans, but also how they respond to the SDGs and how they reflect the SDGs in the district performance reports. So this is how we've been able to engage. All these are basically new initiatives because like the voluntary local review, it started this year. We support from UNECA, and basically the process was somewhat disrupted by COVID because this process actually started in February. Then there was a question from, I think, I don't know if I can pronounce the name, Tau Saint, where he was asking how the CSOs have been involved in ensuring no one is. Now, the CSOs, for example, in Uganda, in the second voluntary national review report, for the first time in Uganda, is that the CSOs authored a similar, worked with government author the voluntary national review report. The previous years, the CSOs have been authoring their own reports, independent reports. This time in 2020, we authored a single report with the CSOs. But also the CSOs are also leading a campaign of popularizing the SDGs in Uganda called the Tonde Kamabega campaign. We translated the Leaving No One Behind into the local language, and it's called the Tonde Kamabega campaign, and it's being coordinated under the Uganda National NGO Forum. So this is one of the campaigns that is being led by the CSOs. So we feel the CSOs are participating. Recently, we have been engaging the CSOs to develop the SDG localization manual, because we feel there are a number of stakeholders are interested in localizing the SDGs in regards either to data, to planning frameworks, or to reaching out to the common persons in the community. So we felt that there is a need to have a localization manual. So this localization manual is actually under development, and we are working with Uganda NGO Forum to reach out to, to develop this manual. Then there was also a question, I think I answered that of Stefano, how data is used when I talked about the SDG investor maps. And there is a gentleman, I think Tausit again, who asked about the coordination challenges. Yes, there used to be coordination challenges before. And like Margaret said, even during, through the evaluations and assessments, that's when the government made a decision to establish a SDG Secretariat to be able to coordinate the SDG implementation architecture. So for now, I don't think there are a number of basically challenges. Now that we have a secretariat, at least it's able to draw a number of stakeholders, connect a number of stakeholders, and to harmonize the interests of the different stakeholders, especially between the state and non-state actors. Then how the platform has been able to help in saving transaction costs, definitely yes. Of course, with such kind of platform, it's a one-stop center for our reporting system, tracking and reporting for Uganda. We are able to find, to compile our data into one platform, find it in one platform. Even when it comes to analysis, we're able to find this data in one platform. And so for us as a country, we feel that this platform is very helpful, much as definitely we are looking forward to improving it. Of course, comparing it to other platforms in other countries like Rwanda, like I think Ghana, like UK. So we feel if this platform can be enhanced, but for now it's been very good and very helpful for the country in regards to SDG monitoring and reporting. Then the last one, there was a question on how we are, if we are collaborating with SDG forums and emerging evaluators networks. Yes, one, this is done through the Uganda Evaluation Association, which brings different players in M&E in Uganda, and normally they always share different platforms for which we can participate in. And then there is another one called the Results Community Workshop, which is organized by OECD. Actually, last 2 weeks, we had a workshop, a virtual workshop, talking about the same Results Community Workshop organized by OECD. But there's also the DESA Voluntary Local Review Series coordinated by DESA and the UNECA. So we definitely participate in a number of these number of the networks. Of course, there are many. You never know, Margaret could be participating, and others, Benjamin could be participating, but at least these are some of the common platforms or networks where we are participating in as the SDG Secretariat, but also the networks that are in line with SDG monitoring and reporting. So I think I can hand over to my colleague, Margaret.
Okay, Margaret, we have some questions in French, but let's proceed with Margaret first. Margaret, you have the floor. You can hear me? Margaret? She cannot hear me. Okay,
I don't see her online.
Oh, that's right.
So maybe, Kwaku, for the French question, I can ask Pascal to respond. I can say it in English, so he can try to respond.
Okay, you have the floor.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first question is, what challenges are Uganda facing in designing and monitoring the SDG? The second one, how often are the SDG indicator tracked? And the last one is, beyond the SDG, do you have other indicator that you are tracking? Yeah, Pascal.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. I think the challenge is definitely range from availability of data, but also disaggregation. For instance, in this voluntary national review report, much as we are talking about availability of data for the 92 SDG indicators, but I can guarantee you that some of these indicators are not disaggregated. We find about, like for example, metadata for a particular indicator is talking about disaggregation either by gender and by region or location, but then you find data is only disaggregated by gender, and you are not able to tell in Uganda, if you have, let's say, about 5 sub-regions, how is this sub-region performing in regards to that SDG? So we have some of the indicators that do not have detailed disaggregation as per the metadata, and then in addition to non-availability of some of the indicators. Because most of you will agree with me that most of these SDG indicators, data production, there are a few of them whose data is administrative data. So some of them you find they need the national assessments, and then these national assessments sometimes take place every after 5 years, like the National Household Survey, like the Uganda Demographic Survey. And so what that means is you find you're reporting in 2020, but you're still referring to data of 2016. And here we are talking about use of official statistics at the country. And so much as we might have data maybe for 2019, but sometimes either this data is from a CSO or from a UN agency or development partner or agents like European Union. And so that is regarded as non-official statistic. And that's why there has been the other initiative of the citizen-generated data. So we are saying, if we are lacking data for the SDG indicators, can we make the non-official statistics official? Can that data that is available be reviewed by Uganda Bureau of Statistics to become official? So those are some of the challenges that we are meeting in some of those monitoring and reporting. Then how often? It definitely depends on the metadata of the indicator. But most of the indicators are annual, so they are generated through annual reports, either administrative annual reports, like the sector performance annual reports, or the national surveys, like I talked about, which sometimes take place every after 5 years, like Uganda Demographic Survey, National Household Survey, something like that. So those are some of the challenges. Then the other additional indicators, we've been tracking the African Agenda 2063. And actually, when I talked about the voluntary local review, in that approach, we are looking at the 2030 agenda, but also the African 2063 agenda, because UNECA has been supporting us and encouraging us to look at both agendas as we do these assessments. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. I will give 1 minute for Rosa just to conclude, and 1 minute to Stefano. Then I will come back to the presenters. Rosa, you can hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, the network is still bad.
I hope, okay. Maybe I'll turn off the video.
Okay.
Okay. So it just basically to look at the global framework and how the Ugandan experience fit into that. The global follow-up and review process has principles, and among them is voluntary country-led national review process, which are the foundation for the regional as well as global review processes. This also suggests that monitoring and evaluation process, as well as indicators and targets, need to be tailored to the context of countries. The second most important principle I would like to highlight is principle of ensuring open, inclusive and participatory and transparent review process for all. The same principle is followed for the formulation of SDGs, and it has been also an integral part of the global indicators framework. Further to that, could be complemented by national and regional indicators for baseline targets. So in addition to those framework and tools, the global agenda suggests
The network is still bad. We are
mainstreaming of SDGs into national plans and strategies. This is what many of the countries have done, including Uganda. And also there is, okay. So statistics, but still a recent study by UN Statistic Division, which indicated that 4 out of the 17 goals, only half of the countries have comparable data, and there is country level data deficits, as well as some of the indicators which are available has a significant time lag. So in this context, what countries are doing to improve data availability and timeliness is the most important effort in tracking and monitoring of SDGs. So coming to the experience from Uganda, we can generally see that it's very much in line with the framework.
Your network is not stable. It is not stable.
Highlighted earlier, Uganda has taken the appropriate steps in integrating SDGs into their national
plans. Can we give the floor to Stefano?
To their national realities. So what I've seen is the perfect result.
Okay. Stefano, can you proceed? We can hear Rosa very well. The network is very bad. Stefano, your final remark?
Yeah, I mean, my final remark is that I think Uganda can really be an example for many other countries on how this synchronized action can actually help to develop to develop data and use them for evaluation and to advance the agenda. I think it can also be it would be great to have a community of practice around these topics and actually share ideas, especially on the challenges, I think, and be open to talk about what is not actually currently working, just because we have 10 years ahead. And so like countries like Uganda, which clearly are ahead of the learning curve, we can learn a lot from them, from what are the most difficult parts. What are the most difficult parts? What are the biggest challenges in using evaluation and stats to foster the sustainable development agenda? All in all, it's been a great session. I've learned a great deal. Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot for all this very interesting information.
Thanks very much, Stefano, for your good contribution. And as you said, we can learn a lot from what Uganda showcased today. And so let me give the floor to Margaret and to Pascal for the last word. Rosa, your network is bad, and I cannot give you the floor again. The network is very bad today. Pascal?
Oh, yes, thank you. I think there are no specific questions, basically.
Okay, I understand. Maybe I'll give it in writing.
Okay, Pascal, no, it is not a question. We have finished the question. Just your last word.
Okay. Yes, I think a number of things, a number of developments have taken place in Uganda, especially after the establishment of the SDG Secretariat. And I would implore some of the countries that possibly would like to also accelerate their efforts in regards to SDG implementation, maybe to somehow learn from Uganda, because the Secretariat basically our work is geared towards coordinating SDGs. So anything to do with SDGs, we are there. As the CSOs want you on SDGs, the private sector, the persons, the UN agencies, they are so much interested in the SDGs. So you're there to support them every time. And I think for me, it is a big lesson for other countries to establish possibly the same kind of framework within their countries to adopt it, and they should be able to see some of these initiatives. Because, for example, our engagement with the young persons, there are so many young people, there are so many CSOs, but at least we've been able to coordinate because we are basically dedicated to the SDGs alone. So I think that is one of the things we can. Then, in regards to, as we conclude, I think as a country, we also need to learn how other countries have possibly have been able to respond to the challenges of data. Because much as we have been able to share good lessons, good practices, but the truth is there is still challenges of data. And so we'd want also to hear from other countries, maybe when opportunity arises next time, or how these countries are responding to the challenges of data, because it's a real challenge. So I think that's what I can conclude with, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Pascal. It is important to hear from other countries as well to see what challenges they are facing. So I will really want to thank the presenter for this good contribution, and to the discussant as well. You did a great job. Thank you all. Unfortunately, we couldn't give the floor lively to the audience. We are very late. We need to start the second session in 3 minutes. So thank you very much for this presentation. Great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to start the second session in 2 minutes. Thank you. Joseph, je pense qu'on peut commencer la session. Hein? On peut reprendre, non?
Oui, je crois bien, hein, parce qu'on est un peu en retard.
Oui. Okay. Il est déjà 15h22, donc on va reprendre. Donc, dans cette deuxième partie, nous allons parler des opportunités et des défis dans le suivi des ODD en Afrique. Et donc, nous allons avoir une première présentation faite par Momar, Kouta et puis Rafk Mahjoubi. Donc, on va leur donner la parole. Vous faites déjà, vous vous présentez rapidement et puis maintenant, vous allez commencer la présentation. Donc, Momar et Rafk, vous êtes prêts? L'interprétation est disponible. Donc, vous pouvez le faire en anglais comme en français. Pas de problème. Vous avez la parole.
Thank you very much, Louis. So I'll start, and then my colleague Momar will finish the presentation. So as Louis was mentioning earlier in the presentation, the African Development Bank has been requested by the heads of states to put in place a system for data dissemination. It was to assist countries in a way to make governments more accountable and transparent. And this was at a request of the AU heads of states in 2012. So the objective of this initiative that was led by the bank is to facilitate access to statistics and to improve evidence-based decision making. But at the same time is to harmonize data at the regional level to allow for comparison among countries, and all this should be standard driven. And that's the spirit in which we developed the Africa Information Highway and we introduced this data portal, is to have a harmonized system, is a network of systems across the continent where it's the same standard is used and the same tool. So there are no challenges whatsoever in terms of flow of data among technologies and through a standard-based system. Next slide, please. So what we have done, actually, we developed a platform. It's only one platform, and this is very important to understand. This is the first time, actually, in the history that this happened at a continental scale. We have one platform, and on top of that platform, we have 54 instances for countries and 16 instances for regional and sub-regional organizations. So it's one platform with 70 data portals, all connected together. They can communicate in lifetime. Data can flow, copy-paste from one platform to another platform, from Uganda to Tunisia to Senegal. To it's really very efficient in this way. And also, as we worked with our partners, we included other ministries and other national institutions like ministries of finance, central banks, and so on. Now, what we have a network of data dissemination system at the continental level using cutting-edge technologies, using the same platform. So even in terms of maintenance and in terms of cost, we are only maintaining one platform. We are not maintaining 70 platforms or 70 data portals. No, we are only maintaining one platform. And this is very cost efficient. And this data portal is combining data dissemination with data reporting. And this is the relevance as well for the SDGs and why this is very, very important and used in terms of SDGs reporting. And that's the reason why we have so many partners are coming now and using this platform to collect data from the countries. And this is very important, not only for the partners, but also for the countries, because what you can see in many African countries is that when you report data, you will report based on templates that you receive from different UN agencies and other international organizations. So you have to fill one by one these templates and report based on that templates. Most of the time is Excel templates. But using this platform, as we have said earlier, it's standard-based, it's the technology that can communicate through APIs and so on. So you just upload your data once to the system, and then anyone can come and pull it from there without needing you to fill any questionnaire, because they can understand the content because it's standard-based. Now we have a partnership with IMF regarding the EGDDS. Many of you know the EGDDS. It's one of the standards that are requested by the IMF for reporting by countries. And the IMF used to use a system for reporting which countries should upload their data. And now they are using this platform, the open data platform of the bank. And we have already covered more than 30 countries, 30 African countries are already using this system to report the IMF. So IMF is abandoning their system and using the ODP. Now we are working as well with UNSD on reporting on SDGs, because the open data platform, it's standard-based, so it uses the SDMX as an exchange standard, but also it uses API and so on. So the UNSD is collaborating with us now to use the platform for data reporting by countries. And as was mentioned earlier by the colleague from Uganda, Uganda is using it to disseminate their SDG data, and they can use it as well for reporting. FAO is now also collaborating with us to use the platform for data dissemination through the agri-surveys and so on. And we are working with UNICEF. Many of you know that UNICEF used to support the DevInfo system, which now is not anymore in use, and they are switching to the open data platform because of the capabilities that the system provides. I'll move to the next slide, please. And actually what we did, actually, it was ahead of the curve, because since 2016, and even before people start interested in these data platforms for the SDGs, we have already set up the SDG platform for all African countries. It was available as early as 2016 for any country. Is like what was shown by Uganda earlier. That system was already put in place since 2016. And we have been providing countries with support and trainings so that they can update their SDG platform and they keep it updated, and including using standards such as I was mentioning earlier, SDMX, which is the preferred standard by the SDGs community for data reporting. And as well, we have a regional hub. So as I said, it's one platform, 70 instances, including the African Development Bank. So it's very easy to centralize all these data at the regional level and come up with regional aggregates. I think we are not playing the role that we should be playing in aggregating data at sub-regional level and regional level to reflect the African reality. And this platform provides at least the technicalities to allow us to do that seamlessly, bringing data together in one place and aggregating if the comparison allows. So how are we doing this? So we are providing support to countries through regional and sub-regional workshops. I was mentioning, for example, the SDMX workshops, which is the standard for exchange of data. We have organized 3 sub-regional workshops last year on reporting for SDGs. We bring in for each regional, sub-regional workshop, six countries where we train them on the standard. But most importantly, at the end of the training, we ensure that the data is uploaded there in that standard. We are also providing support to countries through country missions for coordination to improve the coordination of the SDGs and to assist them in preparing their reporting for the VNRs and so on. And part of this work, we are doing it with the UNSD. And we have been also providing support, remote support in different contexts. The platform can be used to disseminate any kind of data. It's very, very flexible. We are doing it for census, we are doing it for yearbook, and we have been now doing it as well for COVID-19. And we have many countries already using the platform to disseminate and analyze COVID-19 data and providing visualizations for that. Next, please. So here we will go now. I have given you the background on how the AH has evolved since 2012 and since the request by heads of states to today. And Momar, my colleague, will provide you more technical details about the capabilities and the features that these platforms entail.
Thank you, Rafik. So that's to provide brief feedback on the portal side. The bank also have developed a portal to support our approach that we are providing countries on SDG support to implement SDG reporting platform or dissemination platform. So we have an SDG regional hub which is built, and the main SDG main objective of that platform at the regional level is to disseminate global SDG data, which is sometimes available at the global SDG database, which is managed by the UNSD colleagues. And also we have implemented national SDG page, which also are available at country level. And that means that these national portal will allow AMCs to disseminate their own national indicator on SDGs. So that's the two aspects that we have here at the regional level to disseminate global SDG data, and also at the national level to disseminate country national indicators on SDGs. So here in an example that I think you already see on Uganda presentation, this is SDG platform for Uganda, and here we provide a link to review that page or to access that page. And how it works now, we have developed that in a way that users can browse goal by goal. So you can see, for instance, if you go to the goal one, here you have possibility to see all indicators by target. So you can see here, for instance, target 1.2, and another target, you will have all indicators under that target. So we have data displayed by goal and target with a breakdown to indicator level. So for each indicator, for instance, here we have the indicators 1.2.1. Here you can see here which agency is providing that data at the country level, and also a number of buttons that can allow you to browse data or also to see metadata for this given indicators. So for each target of indicators, users can visualize and export SDG data. And here we build what we call comprehensive dashboard available for each indicators. And those dashboard also are created by the country team. I mean, by the national statistic offices and also other agencies which are working around SDG in country. So they can see it and also discuss the best way to present data, and themselves they can also build their dashboard and also make them available for users on the portal. So here is one example on how countries can also present dashboard on SDG data through that portal that the bank is providing. So also, once you have developed dashboard for each indicators on SDGs, users also can download this data or also dashboard. So you have possibility once you visit one portal, for instance, Uganda SDG portal or SDG page, from there you can download the dashboard, and also you can also download the data itself. So to have data on different format, mainly on Excel format or also on PPT format or in PDF format. So these are also some as example for AMCs that we already assisted this year. And this is for Ethiopia, for instance. And here is a link for accessing to that platform for SDG for Ethiopia. And we have also worked with Burundi on that, and also with Zimbabwe this 2 last or 3 last week. Implement also that SDG page for Zimbabwe. And there are other countries which are already also implement this page with bank support to implement that. And also all other RMC's SDG pages are also accessible through the regional hub. So once you visit the regional hub, from there you can access also to country national portal for all African countries. So for the way forward, we built that on a 5 main component. And the first one is currently we plan to expand our technical support, our technical assistance to more RMCs for the coming years. And also automate data reporting. I think also my colleague Rafk already talked about that, to reduce the reporting burden. And for that, there is a standard, what we call SDMX. It is a statistical data metadata exchange, which is an international standard that allows RMCs to facilitate data reporting. So you just set up the system once, and all partners can also pull data from there. So that's also one of the aspects that we are going to target for coming years. And also assist countries to improve coordination on SDG data. And also, I think we also talk about that point during the first session about coordination, that still now there is some countries which are a lot of challenge on the coordination side. So we also target to assist on that point for coming years. Also better quality through better management and modeling data. So here also is again some component related to SDMX, which will allow African countries or RMCs to better centralize SDG data using also international standards, such as SDMX. And also the last point is to centralize and aggregate data at the regional level. And here also is to improve or also to make sure that at the regional level, data are available through this regional portal or regional app that also the bank has developed. And that's also for more information about the portal, how it works, what are the features, and also how to browse data on your SDG page also. We have developed a short video on that, and the link is also provided to that slide. And also participants can go on that to visualize more about the SDG page that the bank developed. And also for any information, you can also email us on that below email a.as@afdb.org. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much to Momar and to Rafk for this presentation on what the bank is doing in terms of SDGs. Very useful presentation and very interesting. For the question, okay. For the question, you can put your question in the chat box. The presenter will respond later. So in the meantime, let's move to the second presenter. Let me check my note. It is Ambrose. He will introduce himself. Ambrose will present the topic reflection on problem and possible solution for data collection now compounded by COVID-19. So Ambrose, you can hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, African Development Bank evaluation organizers. Let me share the screen. don't know whether you are in a position to see the full screen.
Click on it. Yes. We can see your screen.
I hope we are together.
We can hear you, Ambrose.
Yes, so mine is just on briefly reflecting on SDG data issues and the possible solutions, especially especially with the COVID-19 pandemic.
On my side, I'm not able to see the presentation. I can only see a screen, but not the presentation point.
Please stop sharing.
Can you click on the file? We can see the presentation.
Stop the sharing first. Open presentation on your computer, and then you share your presentation.
Are you able to have my screen?
We can see your screen, but we just see a folder, AfDB Evaluation Week. We cannot see your presentation.
You have to stop sharing, open your presentation, and then share again.
Yes, it's coming now.
Yes, now it's okay.
Is it now okay?
It's fine, you can proceed.
Okay, thanks. And so just a reflection on data issues and possible solutions amid this COVID-19. And so I will just quickly go into the outline part. Yeah, so as guided, it looks at the status, Africa status, Africa's data gaps and status. It also reflects on the status at global level and the trend before COVID, but also highlights the possible solutions amid this COVID, because we know COVID has affected progress of SDGs. But then looking at the SDG data gaps and status, we still see Africa's progress is still short of the SDG targets. When actually you refocus at country level, alignment of SDGs in national plans is still incomplete, less than 100%. And beyond that, we also see that the SDG indicator and methodology framework remain incomplete, not following globally harmonized framework based on the 10 principles. Further, we also see that only 41% of the SDG indicators have data. And when it comes to comparable data, only 50% of African countries have comparable surveys over the last 2 decades. So overall, we see insufficient data availability or coverage. And with the current situation, we expect COVID-19 to exacerbate regional and continental inequalities when it comes to data. So the key challenge is how can we meet SDG goals or targets if we don't generate reliable, accurate, and timely data to track progress. And so as a strategy, in our 5-year strategic plan, we intend to engage national statistics and planning offices to align to the SDGs. But also, we also know that the COVID-19 has impacted negatively the traditional way of generating data. And so we shall also utilize the developed continental database MRI system for real-time data and comparable data, and also a system that will also enable national countries to track their progress. So that's what you have laid. In terms of the COVID-19 impact on SDGs, hope you can all see COVID impacts on all the 17 SDGs. But look, hello?
The COVID impact, you can see this slide. You can
yeah, but there is this, I think, a slide that is jumping and I can't have it, especially this one of index. I had wanted to flash out a situation before COVID and before the trend. There's another slide which I thought would come in. Maybe let me check and see how it is. Maybe it could be hidden. Yeah, so before that, the situation before COVID, when you look at the 17 goals, and in terms of progress, out of the 17 goals, 13, for 13 out of the 17, not a single African country achieved green. Green indicating that is moving according to progress as per the targets. And so at specific goal level, we see SDG 3, the good health and well-being, only 87% of the countries scoring red. Red implying stagnation. Now, no, so when you narrow down, go ahead and look at SDG 9, the infrastructure, 80% of the country scoring red again. When you check SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, 78% of the African countries scoring red again. So out of the 13, out of the 17, 13 goals, no, as I had already mentioned, no country scored green. So the situation before COVID was mixed and actually not a good one. And now, with the COVID, we expect some SDGs to be heavily affected and some SDGs being affected more than others. But what we will note from the last performance is that it's only in terms of better performance, SDG 13, which is on climate action, and SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production. These we saw 19% and 26% respective of the countries achieving green. Green indicating that SDG is progressing according to the standards. Now, that's the situation before COVID-19. But the trend analysis brings it clear that the 59 out of 97 indicators for which time series data are available. So we, as my colleague mentioned, that yes, there is that time lag. Most of the data is too old, and more challenging is that you cannot generate a trend out of that. So only 59 out of 97 indicators have time series data that you can correct. And so no time series for specific goals, 10 and 12, which is again a challenge when it comes to comparing performance over time. Across all goals, most frequently observed is stagnation. The stagnation is the orange one when you check in the Africa dashboard summary report. Yeah, so so what does this tell us? It tells us that the situation before COVID was not good enough. Much as some SDGs were progressing others were not progressing at all. We're actually decreasing below 50%, decreasing at a decreasing rate. That's the decreasing we are talking about, the decreasing score. And so, and again, more to that, you find it's decreasing at a decreasing rate, but also, again, in a wrong direction. So, which tells us that we need to engage national statistics and planning offices in ensuring that we have comparable data, accurate and real time. And the only way we can have that is to ensure that we utilize some of the database system, which I think my colleagues Rafk and Kouta mentioned, and supplementing possibly some of those database systems in ensuring that we have accurate and real-time data. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, we can easily observe that it's goal 1, 2, 3, and 4, where we can at least have scenarios and we are able to generate based on some scenarios. But look at other goals. Other goals, we are not able to have quantification. And this tells us the challenge we have, the data challenge that we have ahead of this. And so, as I mentioned, COVID-19 is affecting all SDGs, but some SDGs are more affected than others. And so you can easily see the impact that we try to put, try to ascertain on each of these goals, though some are not quantified, but others are a bit quantified because of data availability. Yeah, so in terms of the implications, we can see when you check, actually, when you look at this slide, meeting international reporting requirements will be a challenge for African countries. When you compare Sub-Saharan Africa with the rest of the world, you easily see that we still have a challenge ahead of us. And so this was a survey that was done by United Nations and World Bank, trying to ascertain the extent to which COVID-19 is likely to affect the data collection among regions. And so we can easily see Sub-Saharan Africa across, or we see that in terms of meeting international reporting requirements will be a challenge. But even then, producing the monthly, the quarterly statistics is also going to be a challenge. And when you go to producing administrative data, again, it's a key challenge. So what we pick from here is that we still have, we shall still have data problems, data issues, even in the presence of COVID. And so implying that the traditional means of data collection is no longer possible. We need to build the capacity, especially when it comes to national statistics offices, because currently there are capacity gaps to deliver timely and disaggregated data for a number of indicators. As you saw in the introduction part of it, it's only 92 out of 332 for which we have SDG, for which we have data on SDG indicators. And so this is a challenge, and we need to strengthen that part. Beyond that, we have also seen African countries having finance issues, having data, funding being cut, and they are struggling to maintain in a new norm. And so it's a new norm demanding innovative aspects of data collection. And so we need to take advantage of the revolution in the information and communication mechanisms. And plus, so with the growing lot of CSOs, we expect unprecedented opportunities. And so we need to take advantage of the new types of complementary mechanisms for data metrics. And the key in this is the geo-referenced data that can now be collected easily using the mobile phone applications to provide location-specific information, especially on government facilities, water points, and even issues to do with climate change. And we have seen Nigeria doing well on this. Yeah, so we need to align all steps from planning to reporting as part of the takeaways. As I already mentioned, there is no way we shall continue to engage in the traditional way of data collection, because COVID is real and COVID is there. And so the only way is to take advantage of the remote data collection. Then also build institutions that can produce accurate, timely, and comparable data. And so key in this is we need to engage the National Statistics and Planning Offices in ensuring that we have this. Also, utilize the database MRI system developed by the Center for SDG Center for Africa to generate real data. Yeah, so, but everything is possible. Yeah, because we know for us to achieve the SDG targets, then we need everybody on board. So we need the funding from the rest of the world. We need also to have our own efforts in ensuring that no one is left behind. Thanks for listening. Your comments and contributions are highly welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And this is a wonderful presentation. You address really this new normal situation. We have some question and comment. Let's start question to Rafk and to Momar. Momar, you can see that in the chat box or not?
Oh yes, yes, I can see some of them there.
Okay, okay, okay. So you can start.
Yep. So I think I see one question about on data availability at country level. What I can say is yes. So we know that also some still countries have some challenge on data availability, and the bank also have another support component we call statistical capacity building, the SCB, which also support countries on data production, including also SDGs. So I think also the bank will probably also provide support to RMCs at that point to make sure that more SDGs also are available at country level. And the second part I can see also is about disaggregation. If portal also allowed to have data at the regional or provincial level. Yes, technically the portal also already include that kind of feature. The countries just need to make sure that those data are available, maybe by sex, by region, by province, and so on. So all this kind of disaggregation, so the portal also can provide that kind of database, which can be set up also technically and also disseminated. So the only issue here that the data availability, if they are available at this level, country or regional or province level, the portal can be also disseminated as data. So I think that's the two communication I see. I don't know if Rafk can complement also on that point.
If I just may add, Momar, regarding this point, is that also visualization of disaggregated data by region is possible. So you can create a map and you can show the data disaggregated by province, by any admin level available. The only thing that you you need shapefiles. You upload your shapefiles to the portal, and then these shapefiles will show up on your country map, and will go as many admin level as you want, 2, 3 levels, and then if the data is available at the disaggregated level by region and sub-region and province and so on, so then it can be visualized on the portal. So technically, as Momar was saying, there is no problem on creating disaggregated data on the portal in terms of dimensions, but also in terms of visualizations on maps and tables and so on.
Okay, thank you, Rafik.
That's another one.
Okay.
Yes,
okay,
another one. I think it's a question about can the portal be used for corps input. So here also what I can say is that portal is not also just limited for SDG data or another topic. So it's an open portal where users can disseminate any kind of data. It can be SDGs, it can be also national account, it can be also trade data and so on. So it's not exactly a portal which just limit on SDGs, but also all other data that are produced by statistical, national statistics system can be also disseminated through that portal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Momar. But the question is, in fact, is not clear because COPS, I don't know what is COPS. What I remember, COPS was some years ago the name of the budget department, the acronym of the budget department. So maybe that person want to, maybe is thinking about using our platform to handle ATRS.
Oh, okay. So it means someone from the bank. Yes. So yeah, I think in this case, he can get in touch with us, and from there we can discuss more in detail about his bank.
Okay, thank you, Momar. Ambrose, a question for you. You can see a question on the acceptance of figure of data from countries. You can see that, Ambrose? Ambrose, you can hear me? Ambrose, you can hear me? You cannot hear me. So,
yes.
Okay, so we can, a question for you on the data acceptance. You can respond?
Yes, for data assessments, we have the frameworks, and the frameworks, basically we are following the global frameworks. But the key challenge here is you find national countries, African national governments having their own frameworks. And that's the challenge actually I mentioned related to the SDG indicator and methodology framework being incomplete. You find most African governments are using proxy SDG indicators, but which proxy indicators are very far away from the globally harmonized indicator. And so this has been a key challenge, but as part of our plans in the next 5-year strategic plan, one way of we want to go down to African nations, harmonizing that, doing the localization, but also where mapping has not been done, we shall enable countries to map, and mapping following the globally harmonized SDG indicator framework. That's the best I can say. The promise is that we are going down to national countries, because we have seen the challenge when it comes to reporting at national level. Especially, we really struggle to have data from African countries. And so it's for our benefit to go down and do showcase exactly what they are supposed to do, and ensuring that at the end of the day, we all benefit from our performance reports. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambrose. Just the next question, the figure for goals in your report are estimated in this years. How is the acceptance from countries on these estimated figures?
Come again?
He said that you put in your presentation, you have some figures where you have a big cycle with some figures. Rosa want to know if that figures, countries are aware about that figures. How did you make the calculation for that figures?
Which slide is that specifically?
I think the slide with the cycle. We have some figures.
Yeah, so this of COVID-19?
Yes, this one, yes.
So yes, for these are goals for which some of the for which that is available. Look at goal number 1, look at goal number 2, look at goal number 3 and number 4. And so based on the data that is available across the continent, then we are able to play around with the scenarios and able to project and tell how many million people could be pushed into extreme poverty, for instance. How many million Africans are forecasted to be severely food insecure, for instance. So, but we cannot do it, for instance, on goal 11. Why? Data is not comparable. That is not comparable. And for us to compute, actually, in our SDG computation, we have to ensure the data is representative. At least 80% of the data must be available across. And so this to us, this is a key challenge because some goals have data others don't have. And this explains as to why we should engage in database systems, as Rafk was emphasizing, engage in database systems that can generate real data, comparable and accurate, so that we can have this our estimation come out clearly, as it's a standardized. We need to have data representation, and this should be 80%. So data should be available on 80% of these other countries. So this is what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambrose. I really want to thank the presenters, Rafk, Momar.
Louis, il y a une question en français. Il y a une question en français là.
There is a question in French.
Yeah, je vais lire ça en français comme ça.
I will read this in French, like the interpreters can interpret it. They will do their work.
Okay, la question.
The question.
La digitalisation de la collecte de données.
Digitization of data collection is there for a bank perspective.
Que pensez-vous du géoréférencement?
What do you think of georeferencing?
Des interventions dans cette même logique.
The interventions in this respect, or within this same logic.
Okay.
Yes. If I get you very well, because we are aware COVID-19 is present, and data is a challenge, and we cannot go via the traditional means of data collection. The only possible option is to go digital. And the reason why we're emphasizing that we need to fully digitize so that we can do the remote data collection using the mobile phone applications and web-based surveys. This is one way. But this is actually a necessary condition, but might not be sufficient. The sufficient condition is that you must have a database system where you can have a data system that is user-friendly and can utilize those applications. And so that's where we are talking of the database system, the database system for monitoring and reporting, which is in harmony, which can be, yes, you can import and export as our colleague showcased with the African Development Bank data portal. But so if you can be in a position to do that, that means you can also have this real-time reporting and monitoring. Yeah, so this is what we're actually talking about, that yes, when we are talking of SDG data tracking and reporting, the key challenge remains that generation of reliable data and accurate and timely data to track progress. In the absence of the traditional means, in the absence of the development data generation, which has been a tradition for most countries to collect data after 5 years, in the absence of that, if we did remote data collection, do we have a system that is linked to that can generate that accurate and comparable data? So, and that's where we were like, yes, the remote data collection is just necessary, but might not be sufficient until we utilize some of the data-based tracking, monitoring, and reporting systems. Thanks.
I think that this question is not necessarily related to Ambrose. It's related to bank staff, because they can point to the Map Africa initiative, the Bank Map Africa initiative, in terms of geolocalizing the project. Well,
okay.
If bank staff can share the bank experience in the SDR Map Africa initiative.
Okay, thank you. Some comments, Momar and Rafk, on that?
Yeah, I can react to that quickly. The bank has been doing a big job on this, and you know, georeferencing infrastructures in general. For example, in the statistics department, we have, for example, a few years back when the Ebola erupted, we have geo-referenced all hospitals and health facilities in the continent, and that was very important because you can overlay the population distribution with the for example, with the hotspots, and then you can overlay that with the health facilities, and you can analyze the capacity of health facilities to deal with the with this. We have more and more in Africa geo-referenced censuses, and this is key to what is coming. So we have more and more. You look at many countries now, they do the census using handheld devices, and they geo-reference households and so on. And that allows for better analysis and for localized analysis and for better interventions when something happened. Now, again, in the statistics department, we are starting also a new work on a data innovation lab where big data will play a big role. And in that direction, we will be using more and more information, such as satellite imagery and so on, to have better information at the geolocalized level. This is, I think, in the future is key. We cannot talk anymore about statistics without disaggregating it at the geographical level, at the most disaggregated level, to better understand or better prevent like pandemics and so on. So it's in our radar. We have been doing job on that, and we are improving on that as we go, and we are increasing our capabilities in terms of collecting data. When we talk about collecting data in a digitalized way, actually it has been around for quite some long time. But now it's more about analyzing and collecting data through new sources of data and big data with the most disaggregated and precise level possible.
OK, thank you, Rafik. Joseph, on a encore des questions, commentaires? Oui, c'est bon. Joseph? Okay.
Je ne sais pas si la question, la dernière question a été abordée. Before we get into data analysis paraphase most, did you see the question? I don't know if the last one. From Onyema Hobi.
From Onyema Hobi.
Ah, I get a new one. I can read the question. Before we get into data analysis paralysis facing most developed countries, it's important that we define key metrics indicators that will be used. Next line down should be to define all the feed into data requirement. How much support is the bank providing country from a practical point? What is AfDB doing on ground?
Mm-hmm.
I think the question is in the. Yeah. Did you get the question or did you find it? It's the last question.
Yeah, I found the question.
Yeah.
I can see the question. Yeah, I can see the question. I can see that.
It's a little bit long, but.
Before
I can react on that quickly, Louis, if you want. You know,
Rafik, we can react.
We have already many agendas. You know, we have the SDGs. The colleagues earlier from Uganda talked about the Agenda 2063. In the bank, we have the high fives, where we have also key indicators that we monitor and so on. So we have already at the extra national level, we have many agenda and key metrics that we are monitoring. At the national level, we have also national development plans where you have, you know, indicators that the country wants to monitor. You know, I don't think the issue of what are the indicators of the metrics that we are using to monitor development is the issue actually today. Actually, my problem personally is we have too many agendas to monitor, and how to harmonize and to coordinate or to conciliate these agendas is more the challenge. And that's where we're having, you know, we do all this work of mapping national development plan to the SDGs, to the Agenda 2063, and so on. And that's where we have now challenges. Actually, is maybe the multiplication of metrics that is paralyzing somewhere the data production side, and not the other way around. It's debatable. I fully understand that.
Okay. Thank you, Rafik. Thank you, Rafik. No more questions, Joseph?
I see someone is asking that he sees the figures for goal. Yes, someone is asking that he sees the figures for goals in our reports and our estimated indices. How is the acceptance from countries on these estimated figures? So normally when we are generating the index and dashboard report for at continental level, we have an implementation survey. So this implementation survey has questions of what we feel should be captured in the assessment of the index. And so after we have generated that data, we do validation. Validation, we do it with the national statistics officers and planning officers. So it's that validation that brings in acceptance, because they have to own what they gave us. They are the ones who gave us information, so we do the validation. In the case of any change, they are the ones to update us before the analysis we actually do the validation so that once we do the analysis, we are sure we have captured all their ideas. So the acceptance is embedded into the validation because we deal with national planning offices.
Okay, thank you, Ambrose. Ownership is very key, is key. So let me conclude this interesting session.
But maybe, Chair, before you conclude, the other aspect is that when we are doing the assessments, let's be monitoring and reporting, we find ourselves using official statistics and non-official statistics. So now, how can the bank now help these other also institutions? For instance, the civil society organizations, the academia, in ensuring that they are also supported to in generation of development data. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambrose. The bank is doing a lot in terms of technical assistance, financial contribution to African countries. We have several windows we use to help countries. But as you know, our main partner is the Ministry of Finance. So some people, the bank is doing a lot, but sometimes people are not aware that we do a lot in terms of approval of project and work in the countries. And but this kind of question, we can do it. We can discuss that bilaterally. We can give you some examples. But in this forum, it is difficult to go into detail. That's what I can tell you for the moment. So, merci à tous pour cette bonne session. Et je dirais que depuis, en termes de conclusion, depuis 2015, les pays africains font beaucoup d'efforts pour le suivi des ODD. Et au niveau des pays, comme vous avez constaté, avec l'exemple de l'Ouganda, pour le succès du suivi des ODD, il est important, comme vous l'avez vu dans les présentations, qu'on intègre les ODD dans les stratégies nationales. Et ensuite, il faut que l'aspect évaluation soit au centre. Il faut qu'on ait des mécanismes d'évaluation, c'est important. Et puis ensuite, il faut avoir la dimension politique pour le suivi. Il faut avoir la dimension politique. Sans la dimension politique, le succès sera mitigé. Ensuite, la deuxième partie, on a montré des outils très performants pour le suivi des ODD au niveau régional et dans les pays. Et ensuite, la dernière présentation, très intéressante d'ailleurs aussi, qui a montré qu'avec la nouvelle donne du Covid-19, on ne peut plus faire les choses comme par le passé. Et donc, même les moyens traditionnels de collecte des données sont complètement dépassés. Il faut aller vers la digitalisation, aller vers d'autres moyens modernes pour la collecte des données dans les pays. Il faut innover, il faut innover. Et donc, voilà, ça a été une très bonne session sur les SDGs. Et je voulais particulièrement remercier, I want to thank all the presenters, the discussion for this wonderful session, part 1 and part 2. Thank you very much for the interpreters and to the interpreters. Thank you to the organizers of the event. Thank you very much all. So that's the end of the session. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Okay.